To day 4 of my honors project, Tolerated Muslim in America. So every day is going to have a theme. Today is day 4, and it is Muslims versus Islam. What this means is essentially it's the way that prejudice can unfortunately come in and infect a faith that is rooted in justice and in peace, and the effects that can have on our community. Do not take anything I say today as a reason to justify your Islamophobia. That is not why I am here. I am here to address issues that exist within our communities, that exist in a lot of different communities. And those issues, you can reflect on your own lives, on your own communities, and see how you can fight for change within your own as well. That's all I'm trying to do, is fight for change at home before I fight for it elsewhere. I invite you to do the same. It's very important. That's the general theme. The first piece I'll be doing today is called Never. So this piece is actually the first one I ever wrote. I wrote this one 3 years ago, almost to the day, when Tim Miller, a renowned performance artist, came to Wake Forest and encouraged us to write a story about something we felt was important. I wrote this piece, and since then, it has gone through minor edits. It's largely the same piece I wrote 3 years ago. And that's really cool to me. One last thing before I get started, I reached out to Muslims in the community, about 6 or so Muslims who I trusted, of different identities, different ages, different ethnicities, trying to get an idea of what they felt needed to be heard by a wider audience right now. I sent them all 20 of my writings, and they voted, and the 10 that got the most votes ended up being the 10 that were selected. Of the 10 that were selected, 1 was voted unanimously on, and it was Never. This is a story that folks feel need to be heard, especially within the Muslim community, and I couldn't agree more. And it's a little fun and exciting to know that the first one I wrote is the one that everyone seems to agree needs to be heard. There is a little content warning here. There is brief mention of sexual assault in this one. If you need to step away at any time, please do so for your mental health. Please center yourself here. It is a very brief mention, and it's about 5 seconds of the piece, and I'll move on. But I do want you all to be aware that will be part of it. Without further ado, Never. The first time I knowingly met an openly gay person, I was nearly 15 years old. He was sick the first day of class, so my introduction to him was an empty chair directly to my right in front of my high school theater teacher. She nodded to his missing presence and said, "Oh, he'll be here tomorrow. For those of you who don't know him, he's a super sparkly gay man." I barely contained my disgust. Just the idea of having to sit next to someone like that all year, someone with that lifestyle. You know, I had been raised, I still am a religious Muslim. I had been taught that people who were gay chose to be that way, that they were sinful and wrong. And I bought into it. And that super sparkly gay man, well, I figured out how he got that title. No matter how his day had been, how long, how tiring, how full of people like me it had been, he would always shout, "Everyone have a super sparkly gay day!" as he left. Like a lot of you, everyone would always smile. But eventually so did I. But I was confused. I thought he was evil, supposed to be sinful and wrong. He was kinder than me, more accepting than anyone I've known, more embodying of the beliefs of love and acceptance I claim to follow than most straight Muslims and Christians. I was so confused. Not long before, my brother, who was then 23 years old and had been in our family for about a decade, he came out as bi. But I thought that would be okay. Because there was still a chance he ended up with a woman. I thought being bi was being half straight, so I was like, okay, no, that'll be fine, because he can make the right decision, the decision to marry a woman. But after I talked to him that summer, and then after meeting my classmate, I was lost. It was my first crisis of faith. I believe every word of the Quran. I believe fully in Islam, but how could I believe that the God of Abraham and the God of the Muslims, of the Jews, of the Christians, would damn those he created in his image? How could I accept that the kindest man I've ever known would go to hell? That my brother would... No, he's my brother. I can't accept that. I couldn't. So I read and I annotated the entire Quran, and I paid special attention to the story of Lot and Sodom and Gomorrah. Yes, the same one from the Bible. No one ever told me they were thieves. No one ever told me they were murderers, looters, gamblers, drunks, rapists. No one ever told me they tried to rape angels. All they ever said was the men married men and the women married women. The story is far more condemning of rape and of sex slavery perpetuated by men than it is of queerness. When I bring this up, though, people are like, no, the scholars say this, the scholars say that. The scholars are people. People with their own flaws and biases. When I point to the verse in the Quran that refers to the men, quote, without sexual desire towards women, clearly indicating the existence of asexual or gay men in Arab society, people plug their ears and walk away. They don't want to hear it. These aren't religious beliefs. These are outdated cultural beliefs influenced by white supremacy that are infecting the Abrahamic faiths. And I'm mad. I am mad that they somehow managed to convince me that the most gracious, the most merciful, that Allah, that God, would damn those he created in his image. If God, really shapes us as he wills in the womb, as the Quran says, then he shapes us to be straight, gay, bi, trans, ace, male, female, non-binary, queer, and anything and everything. To say anything else, that is blasphemy. No? Now, I love my God. I do. But how could I believe in every word of the Quran and believe that God would damn those he created precisely in his image for being created in his image? It just doesn't make sense to me. And non-Muslims, do not think I'm only going after my ummah, my community here. This issue does not lie solely with Muslims. Christians do this too. Jewish folks do this too. People of every major faith do this too. And none of us have the right, until we can all treat our queer siblings as just that, our siblings. We are blaspheming ourselves, our own beliefs that God does not make mistakes, that we are created in his image, that he is the most loving, and that he created all of us equally. I love my God. I will always love my God, but I will never believe that the God of Adam, Enoch, Noah, Hud, Salah, Abraham, Lot, Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, Job, Jethro, Moses, Aaron, Ezekiel, David, Solomon, Elijah, Elisha, Jonah, Zechariah, John the Baptist, Christ the Messiah, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the Jews, the Christians, the Muslims, the most gracious, most merciful, would damn all queer people to hell. I won't. If you do, I pray you take a look inside your own holy text. I pray you take a look inside yourself and see if you really can, in good heart and good faith, come to that conclusion. As for me, never again. Never. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. I also wanted to say, I forgot to mention this at the start, there is a QR code right in front of me right here. If at the end you could come up and scan that, there are resources, further reading. There's so many things, especially with Never, that I wanted to include, and there's only so much time. But there's further reading for what I'm talking about today. I'm only going to be here 15 minutes. There's resources, donation links, petitions to sign, social media accounts to follow. Please go ahead and scan this when we're done. This is why one of the reasons I'm here is to enact change. There's no point in me talking if you guys just go home and never think about this again. So please scan this QR code when we're done here and enact some change. The second piece, BLM. I wrote this piece during the 2020 Black Lives Matter protests. I was not able to go to protests in part because of COVID and where I was at home with my family. And at the time, my knee was not in working condition. I couldn't really walk. And I was so mad at myself that I couldn't do anything. I needed to do something. So I wrote this piece, and it was something. I never felt like it was enough, but it was something. It's one of the few that have actually been shared publicly before. This one is on my Instagram already. It has gone through some edits, and now what I have to present to you is the final version of my BLM performance art. Thank you. As an Arab and a Muslim, I've gone through a lot. The "where are you from" from the cashier who took my order. The "you act white" from my friends who I've known half my life. The "stop being so angry" from a friend I've known for a decade. The random stranger that walked up to my mom in a movie theater to ask her about terror attacks. The fear I had when I found myself driving in the middle of nowhere, lost cell reception, and then saw Trump flags and Confederate flags everywhere. The fear I had for my mother's life when an Islamophobe was elected to the highest position in this country. The white knuckle grip I have on the steering wheel every time I find myself driving next to a cop. But you know what I don't have to deal with? People don't follow me around the store thinking I'm gonna steal something. People don't cross the street to avoid walking past me. People don't yell hate slurs at me in the middle of the road. School administrators have never told me that people like me would struggle in higher courses. Redlining and segregation played no negative role in the schools I attended or the neighborhoods I grew up in. 400 years of systemic discrimination were not aimed at people who looked like me. People don't tell me I'm stuck in the past or think I'm owed the world because I think racism is bad. People don't tell me racism doesn't exist anymore while ignoring the systemic execution of my people at the hands of those that supposedly protect and serve. People don't ignore me and dismiss me when I say those that protect and serve are doing precisely what they were invented to do over 13 plus 12 decades ago. Protect and serve the wealthy, white elite. I don't have to deal with any of that because I'm not black. Black lives matter, and Arab Muslims, we forget that sometimes. We really do. I know an Egyptian Muslim who once said, "Oh, I'm not racist, I'm from Africa, technically." This right after he said that intentionally living poorly was part of, quote, these people's culture. An Arab Muslim I've known half my life once called his black neighbors trashy and a number of other obscene things I don't have the stomach to repeat because they were having a family cookout. The disgust and shame an Arab family has when their child says they want to marry a black person is unmatched. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've seen it with my friends so frequently. I am fighting the same fight in my own life, in my own family right now. I've heard the "because they're black" comments from Arab Muslims anytime something a black person does doesn't fall perfectly in line with what they consider right. It's disgusting. I cannot fathom how people let their colonially enforced anti-blackness seep so deeply into their mindsets that they let it infect their daily lives, they let it infect their relationships with others, that they let it infect their faith. You know, I call out this racism when I see it, and I call it out when and where I see it, but it must be condemned in the harshest of words and actions. The thing is, when you call out a non-black Muslim for their racism, you immediately get met with the turnaround, "But I love Bilal." The first person to ever give the call to prayer, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, 1400 years ago. He was black, I love him. The "but I love Bilal" argument is just the "but I have a black friend" for non-black Muslims. It doesn't mean anything. Muslims, non-black Muslims, we forget that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used his last sermon to remind us that no white person has superiority over a black person, nor does any black person have superiority over a white person. While we remember Bilal, we often forget or choose to ignore that Moses was black-skinned. There are hadith about this. We forget that Adam, the first prophet, the first human on earth, was a black man. The Quran says this directly. We as Muslims can't deny it. Science proves it as well. Many Muslims never learn that Sumayya, the first martyr in Islam, was a black woman. That her son, who was later martyred, Ammar ibn Yaser, was a black man. That the Queen of Sheba was a black woman. That Abraham's wife, Hagar, was a black woman. That the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's companion, who he described as a mother to him, who raised him from his birth till his death, was a black woman. Muslims forget or choose to ignore. Non-black Muslims forget or choose to ignore that the Quran, God tells us through the Quran, that of his signs are the beauty of the heavens and the earth, and the diversity of your languages and your colors. God compares the majesty of being black as night, white as snow, and every imaginable skin tone between as being as beautiful a sign of his glory as everything we know to exist. The heavens, the earth, everything. Racism goes against everything we claim to believe in as Muslims. It really does. And yet some non-black Muslims still miss the point. It is so infuriating to watch from the inside. It's devastating. Which is why we have to fight. To my fellow young non-black Muslims, here and watching, we need to call out racism when and where we see it. Our relatives being old-fashioned, that's no excuse for the hatred they hold in their hearts. If we want them to have their best shot at Jannah, inshallah, then it is our duty, our responsibility to help them. To those so-called old-fashioned Muslims, I hope you have heard me. Your racism is racism. Your prejudice is prejudice. And it is denying the sunnah of the Prophet and denying the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I pray, for your own sake in the hereafter, strive to be better, work to be better, be better. To all the non-black folks listening, Muslim or not, I don't care, all of us, we need to use our privilege. Really take a minute, step back, and think about what you haven't had to go through because you're not black, and then take the anger that you should feel at the injustice of this country, at the injustice of this world, and fight to change it. Fight for change, fight for justice. And remember that justice, it must be fully intersectional. Because of that, any significant changes we have in any of our other movements, for Arabs, for Desis, for queer folks, for disabled folks, for the houseless, for any and all marginalized communities, any changes we achieve in any of those movements, unless Black Lives Matter, those changes will be half-baked appeasements at best, and performative and meaningless changes at worst. Thank you. Thank you all so much for coming, and please scan this QR code for resources for queer folks who are struggling, queer Muslims, black folks in America and globally. Please just scan that. Further reading, donations, petitions, everything I could find. And do your own research beyond this, because I'm one person. This is not a complete list. It's what I was able to find. And thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate you. Thank you.